The sound of my own heartbeat was deafening as I stared at the wedding ring in my trembling hands. The gold band gleamed mockingly under the fluorescent light of Mark's office, and the name Jennifer was etched into the metal with cruel precision. After 42 years of marriage, after building a life together worth over $2.3 million in assets, after sacrificing my own career dreams to support his ambitions, this is what I found hidden in his desk drawer. My name is Sandra Collins. I'm 64 years old, and I live in what I thought was a happy home in Chicago, Illinois. Just 3 hours ago, I was a content wife preparing for our upcoming 43rd wedding anniversary celebration. We had planned an intimate dinner party for 50 guests, including our 3 children and 7 grandchildren. I had already spent $4,500 on catering and decorations, dreaming of renewing our vows in front of our family. Mark had left for his business trip to Denver that morning, kissing me goodbye with the same familiar peck on the cheek he'd given me for decades. "Sandra, honey, would you mind cleaning my office while I'm gone? I've been meaning to organize those files," he had said, adjusting his tie with practiced ease. How naive I was to think it was just about dusty paperwork. The office had always been his sanctuary, a mahogany-paneled room filled with his achievements and memories of our life together. Photos of our children's graduations, our family vacations, and business milestones lined the walls. As I dusted the surfaces and organized the scattered documents, I felt proud of the empire we had built together. Mark's consulting firm had grown from a small startup in our garage to a multi-million-dollar enterprise, and I had been there every step of the way, managing the household, raising our children, and entertaining his clients. But when I opened that bottom drawer to file away some contracts, my world collapsed in an instant. Beneath a stack of old invoices, my fingers found the small velvet box. My heart hammered against my ribs as I lifted the lid, expecting perhaps cufflinks or a watch. Instead, I discovered this ring, this symbol of betrayal that felt like a dagger through my chest. The note beside it was written in Mark's familiar handwriting. "For my darling Jennifer, call me at 555-0147 when you're ready for forever. All my love, M." The paper was expensive stationery, the kind we used for important business correspondence. He had put thought into this. This wasn't some impulsive mistake. This was calculated deception. My hands shook so violently, I nearly dropped my phone as I dialed the number. Each ring felt like an eternity, and when a woman's voice answered with a cheerful, "Hello, this is Jennifer," my breath caught in my throat. But it wasn't just any woman's voice. It was a voice I recognized, a voice that had sat at my dinner table, a voice that had called me Mom for the past 15 years. "Jennifer?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Sandra, is that you? Is everything okay? My daughter-in-law, my son David's wife, the mother of 2 of my grandchildren, the woman I had welcomed into our family with open arms, who I had supported through her struggles with infertility, spending over $25,000 helping them with IVF treatments, the woman I had trusted with my grandson when she needed someone to watch him during her night classes, the woman who was now apparently the recipient of my husband's secret promises of forever." The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. The room spun around me as 42 years of memories crashed down like a house of cards. Every family dinner, every holiday celebration, every moment I had watched Mark interact with Jennifer now took on a sinister new meaning. How long had this been going on? How many lies had I been living? I know many of you watching this have experienced betrayal, but nothing could have prepared me for this moment. If this story has grabbed your attention, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this unfolds. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Leave a comment below. Your support means everything as I share this painful but ultimately empowering journey. I must have sat on that cold office floor for 20 minutes, staring at the phone and the ring, trying to make sense of what I had discovered. The Jennifer who answered wasn't just my daughter-in-law. She was the woman who had been coming to our family gatherings for 15 years, who had helped me in the kitchen during Thanksgiving, who had cried on my shoulder when she miscarried their first pregnancy, the woman I had spent $3,200 on Christmas gifts for just last year. When I finally gathered the strength to pick up the phone and call her back, my voice was steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Jennifer, we need to talk. I'm at Mark's office, and I found something that belongs to you." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Sandra, I can explain everything." "Can you?" I asked, surprising myself with the ice in my tone. "Can you explain why my husband of 42 years has bought you a wedding ring? Can you explain why there's a love note with your name on it hidden in his desk?" She began to sob, and for a moment, my maternal instincts kicked in. This was the same woman I had held when she lost her job 3 years ago, when Mark and I had helped them with their $8,000 mortgage payment to prevent foreclosure. But then reality crashed back down on me. "Please, Sandra, it's not what you think. We never meant for this to happen. It evolved over time." "Evolve?" The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "Jennifer, you're married to my son. You have 2 children with him. What exactly evolved?" Mark and we connected on a different level. He understood my dreams, my frustrations with David always being away for work. When David got that promotion and started traveling constantly, Mark was there for me and the kids. It started innocently. But what? But you decided to destroy 2 families? But you decided that my marriage was expendable? My voice was rising now, and I could feel decades of suppressed anger bubbling to the surface. "You don't understand, Sandra. Mark hasn't been happy for years. He told me how you 2 had grown apart, how you never supported his dreams anymore." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Not supported his dreams? I had given up my own teaching career when he decided to start his business. I had used my inheritance from my parents, $75,000, to help fund his startup. I had entertained his clients, managed his schedule, and raised our children largely alone while he built his empire. "Jennifer, I need you to listen to me very carefully," I said, my voice now deadly calm. "This conversation is over, but this situation is far from finished. You and Mark have underestimated the wrong woman." I hung up before she could respond and immediately called my lawyer, Patricia Henderson, who had been our family attorney for over 20 years. Despite it being after business hours, she answered on the second ring. "Patricia, it's Sandra Collins. I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. It's about Mark, and it's urgent." "Sandra, what's wrong? You sound shaken." "I've just discovered that my husband is having an affair with our daughter-in-law, and from what I found in his office, they're planning to leave their respective spouses. I need to know exactly what my rights are, and I need to protect myself financially before Mark returns from his business trip." Patricia's sharp intake of breath confirmed the severity of the situation. "Sandra, don't touch anything else in that office. Take photos of everything you found and meet me at 8 a.m. sharp. We have a lot of work to do." As I carefully photographed the ring, the note, and everything else in that drawer, I realized that my comfortable life as I knew it was over, but something else was awakening inside me, a strength I hadn't felt in decades. Mark and Jennifer thought they had been clever, but they had no idea what they had unleashed. I thought about our upcoming anniversary party, about the $4,500 I had already spent, about the family members who would be gathering to celebrate what they thought was a loving marriage. I thought about my son David, working late shifts to provide for his family, unaware that his wife was planning to abandon him. I thought about my grandchildren, innocent victims in this web of deceit. By the time I locked Mark's office and walked back to our empty house, I had made my decision. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was about justice, about protecting my family, and about making sure that the people who had betrayed us would face the consequences of their actions. Mark's business trip was supposed to last 3 days. That gave me 72 hours to prepare for the battle of my life. At exactly 8 a.m., I sat across from Patricia Henderson in her downtown Chicago office, watching her face grow increasingly grim as she examined the photos on my phone. The morning sun cast long shadows across her mahogany desk, the same type of wood that had furnished Mark's office, where I'd made my devastating discovery just 14 hours earlier. "Sandra, this is worse than adultery," Patricia said, setting down her reading glasses with a heavy sigh. "Based on what you've shown me and what you've told me about the timeline, I suspect this goes much deeper than an affair." "What do you mean?" I asked, though part of me already feared the answer. "Think about it. Jennifer is your daughter-in-law. She has access to family information, family finances, family plans. If Mark has been planning to leave you for her, they've likely been coordinating for months, maybe years. We need to look at your financial accounts immediately." My blood ran cold. "Mark handled most of our investments and business accounts. I had trusted him completely, focusing my energy on managing our household and supporting his career. The thought that he might have been systematically hiding assets while planning his escape made me nauseous. Patricia was already pulling up our financial records on her computer. As our family attorney, she had access to most of our legal documents and account information. What she found made both of us gasp. "Sandra, look at this. 3 months ago, Mark opened a new business account that you're not listed on. He's transferred $340,000 from your joint savings into this account. Last month, he took out a $150,000 loan against the consulting firm without your knowledge, even though you're supposed to co-sign any major business decisions." I stared at the screen in disbelief. "But that's nearly $500,000. Where is all that money?" "That's what we need to find out. But Sandra, there's more. He's also been making regular payments to something called JM Holdings, LLC. Does that mean anything to you?" "JM Holdings," I repeated slowly. "Jennifer Morrison Holdings?" That was Jennifer's maiden name. Patricia nodded grimly. "It appears your husband has been funneling money to your daughter-in-law for quite some time. These payments started small, $2,000 here, $30,500 there, but they've increased dramatically in recent months. Last month alone, he transferred $25,000 to this account." The room felt like it was spinning. Not only had Mark been unfaithful, but he had been systematically stealing from our marriage, using our money to fund his affair and prepare for his new life. Money that we had earned together, money that was supposed to secure our retirement, money that represented 42 years of shared sacrifice and hard work. "Can we stop him?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We can, and we will," Patricia said firmly. "I'm filing an emergency motion today to freeze all joint accounts and prevent any further transfers. We're also going to demand a full financial audit of the business. But Sandra, you need to be prepared for a fight. Mark is smart, and if he's been planning this for as long as it appears, he's probably prepared for the possibility of getting caught." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. Mark's name appeared on the screen, and Patricia immediately gestured for me to answer while she started recording the call. "Hello, Mark," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Sandra, honey, how's the office cleaning going? Did you find those contracts I mentioned?" The casual tone of his voice, the pet name he still used, the way he was continuing to lie to my face even now, it all fueled the fire building inside me. "Yes, Mark, I found much more than contracts. I found quite a few interesting things in your desk drawer." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear him calculating, trying to figure out exactly what I knew and how much damage control he needed to do. "Sandra, I think we need to talk when I get home." "Oh, we'll definitely be talking, Mark. In fact, we'll be doing a lot more than talking. You see, I've already spoken with Jennifer, and I've already spoken with my lawyer. So when you get home tomorrow, you'll find that a few things have changed." "What do you mean?" "Sandra, whatever you think you know, I know about the ring, Mark. I know about the love notes. I know about the secret bank accounts and the money you've been stealing from our marriage to fund your new life. Most importantly, I know that you've underestimated your wife of 42 years. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline. Patricia was smiling for the first time that morning. "Well done, Sandra. You've just made him panic, which means he's likely to make mistakes. People in panic mode rarely think clearly." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we go to war. But Sandra, this isn't just about money. This is about your son, your grandchildren, and the destruction of your family. Are you prepared for how ugly this is going to get?" I thought about David, working late shifts while his wife planned to abandon him. I thought about my grandchildren, who would soon learn that their mother was leaving their father for their grandfather. I thought about 42 years of love, trust, and partnership that had been a lie. "Patricia," I said, standing up with more determination than I had felt in years. "I've been preparing for this battle my entire life. I just didn't know it until yesterday. Telling David was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life." I sat in my car outside his suburban home for 20 minutes, watching him through the living room window as he helped his 8-year-old daughter Emma with her homework, while baby Michael played with blocks on the floor. Jennifer was nowhere to be seen, probably at what I now realized wasn't actually her book club meeting. When David opened the front door, his face immediately creased with concern. "Mom, what are you doing here? Is everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "David, honey, we need to talk. Is Jennifer here? No, she's at her book club until 9. Mom, you're scaring me. What's wrong? I followed him into the kitchen, the same kitchen where I had helped Jennifer learn to make my grandmother's apple pie recipe just last Christmas. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had welcomed this woman into our family traditions, shared our secrets, and treated her like the daughter I never had. David, I need you to sit down. What I'm about to tell you is going to change everything. For the next 30 minutes, I watched my son's world crumble just as mine had the day before. I showed him the photos of the ring, the love note, played him the recording of my conversation with Jennifer. With each piece of evidence, David's face grew paler, his hands clenching and unclenching as he struggled to process the betrayal. My own father, he whispered, staring at the photo of the wedding ring. My own wife. How long, Mom? How long has this been going on? From what the lawyer discovered today, probably over a year. David, there's more. Your father has been taking money from our accounts, nearly $500,000, and giving it to Jennifer. Money that should have gone to your children's college funds, money that was supposed to secure our family's future. David stood up abruptly, knocking over his coffee cup. The brown liquid spread across the kitchen table like a stain on our family's legacy. $500,000? Mom? That's more than I make in 4 years. I've been working double shifts, missing Emma's school plays and Michael's first steps, trying to save money for their education. And meanwhile, my own father is funding my wife's betrayal? The pain in his voice broke my heart. This was my boy, my first child, who had worked so hard to provide for his family. He had taken that promotion that required constant travel specifically to give Jennifer and the children a better life. He had no idea that his sacrifice was giving his wife and his father the perfect opportunity to conduct their affair. David, I need you to listen to me carefully. Jennifer doesn't know that I've spoken to you yet. We need to be strategic about this. The lawyer says, strategy? David's voice rose, and I was grateful the children were upstairs and couldn't hear us. Mom, my marriage is over. My children's lives are about to be destroyed. My father has been stealing from us and sleeping with my wife. What strategy could possibly fix this? We fight back, I said firmly. We protect those children upstairs. We make sure Jennifer and your father face the consequences of their actions. And we make sure that when the dust settles, you and the children are taken care of. David sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. How am I going to tell Emma and Michael? How do I explain that Grandpa and Mommy that they're... He couldn't even finish the sentence. We'll figure that out together. But David, I need you to promise me something. Don't confront Jennifer tonight. Don't let her know that you know. We need more time to protect our assets and gather evidence. Can you do that? He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Mom, I don't know if I can look at her without... How do I pretend everything is normal when she walks through that door in 2 hours? The same way I've been pretending for the past 24 hours. You find strength you didn't know you had, and you remember that those children upstairs need their father to be strong. Just then, Emma's voice called from upstairs. Daddy, can you help me with my math? David wiped his eyes and stood up. Coming, sweetheart, he called back, his voice remarkably steady. He looked at me with something that might have been admiration. How did you get so strong, Mom? I learned it from your grandmother, and she learned it from hers. Sometimes the women in this family have to be the ones who hold everything together when the men we love let us down. As David headed upstairs to help his daughter, I heard Jennifer's car pull into the driveway. My heart raced as I realized I was about to come face to face with the woman who had destroyed my family. But I also felt something else, a cold, calculating calm that surprised me. When Jennifer walked through the front door and saw me sitting at her kitchen table, her face went white as a sheet. Sandra, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What are you doing here? Hello, Jennifer, I said pleasantly, as if we were discussing the weather. I was just visiting with David and the children. We've had the most interesting conversation about family loyalty and trust. Would you like to join us? The look of pure terror in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She realized that her carefully constructed world was about to collapse, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The battle lines had been drawn, and for the first time in 42 years, I was ready for war. Jennifer stood frozen in the doorway, her purse dangling from her trembling fingers as she stared at me sitting calmly at her kitchen table. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, filled with the weight of all the lies that were about to come crashing down. "Where were you tonight, Jennifer?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fury burning in my chest. "Book club, wasn't it? Tell me, what book are you reading this month?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. We both knew there was no book club, just as we both knew that her Wednesday evening yoga classes and Saturday shopping trips with friends had been elaborate lies to cover her affair with my husband. "Sandra, I can explain," she began, but I held up my hand to stop her. "Actually, you can't, because I already know everything. I know about the ring Mark bought you. I know about the secret bank accounts. I know about the $490,000 he's stolen from our marriage to fund your future together. Most importantly, I know that you've been planning to destroy 2 families while looking me in the eye every Sunday at dinner." Jennifer's face crumpled, and she sank into the chair across from me. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she whispered. "We never meant to hurt anyone." "You never meant to hurt anyone?" I repeated, incredulous. "Jennifer, you're married to my son. You have 2 children upstairs who call me Grandma. You've been living in a house that Mark and I helped you buy, driving a car that we co-signed for, sending your children to a private school that we've been helping fund. The tuition alone, $24,000 a year, comes partially from money you've been stealing from me." "You don't understand," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Mark and we connected. He listened to me in ways David never did. When David started traveling all the time for that promotion, Mark was here. He helped with the kids. He was there when Michael had his asthma attack. He supported my dreams of going back to school." "Supported your dreams?" I laughed bitterly. "Jennifer, I supported your dreams. I watched the children every Tuesday night for 6 months so you could take those real estate classes. I spent $3,800 helping you pay for that certification course. I believed in you, trusted you, loved you like the daughter I never had." The sound of footsteps on the stairs made us both look up. David appeared, having put the children to bed, and the look on his face when he saw his wife's tear-stained confession told me that any hope of keeping this quiet had evaporated. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice barely controlled. "Jennifer, is everything my mother told me true?" Jennifer looked between us, trapped and desperate. "David, please, let me explain. Your father and we fell in love. It wasn't something we planned. It just happened. He understands me in ways you never—" The slap that David delivered across her face echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. I had never seen my gentle son raise a hand to anyone, and the shock of it silenced us all. "Don't you dare," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare blame me for your betrayal. I worked 60-hour weeks to give you everything you wanted. I missed my children's milestones so you could stay home and be the mother you said you wanted to be. And you repay me by sleeping with my father? David, please, get out," he said quietly. "Get out of my house right now." "This is my house too," Jennifer protested. "I have rights." "Actually, you don't," I interjected calmly. "I checked with the lawyer today. Your name isn't on the deed, Jennifer. This house is in David's name only, and the mortgage payments came from accounts that Mark has been systematically draining. So technically, you've been living in a house funded by money stolen from me." Jennifer's eyes widened in shock. She clearly hadn't realized how precarious her legal position was. "You can't just throw me out. I have children here." "Children that you were planning to abandon when you ran off with my husband," David said, his voice growing stronger. "Yes, Mom told me about the ring, about the love notes, about your plans for forever with my father. So tell me, Jennifer, what were you planning to do with Emma and Michael when you started your new life?" The guilty look that flashed across her face was all the answer we needed. In her fantasy of running away with Mark, her own children had been afterthoughts, obstacles to be dealt with rather than precious lives to be protected. "I would never abandon my children," she whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced. "Wouldn't you?" I asked. "Then explain to me how you were planning to maintain your relationship with them while married to their grandfather. Explain to me how you thought this was going to work without destroying their lives completely." For the first time, Jennifer seemed to grasp the full scope of what she had done. This wasn't just an affair. It was the complete destruction of our family structure. My grandchildren would have to live with the knowledge that their mother chose their grandfather over their father. Family gatherings would become impossible. The children would lose not just their intact family, but their entire extended family network. "I need to call Mark," she said suddenly, reaching for her phone. Good luck with that, I said, standing up. I'm sure he'll be very interested to know that your secret is out. I'm also sure he'll be very interested to know that all of his assets have been frozen as of this afternoon, and that the FBI is now investigating the financial irregularities in his business accounts. The color drained from Jennifer's face. The FBI? When someone steals nearly $500,000 from joint accounts and transfers it to shell companies, federal agencies tend to take notice, especially when it's connected to a successful consulting firm that handles government contracts. I hadn't actually contacted the FBI yet, but Jennifer didn't need to know that. Sometimes the threat of consequences is more powerful than the consequences themselves. As I gathered my purse and headed for the door, I turned back to face the woman who had tried to destroy my family. Jennifer, you made a choice. You chose temporary passion over permanent love, excitement over stability, fantasy over reality. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. But I promise you this, you will not take my family down with you. The last thing I heard as I left their house was the sound of Jennifer sobbing and David's quiet voice saying, "Pack your bags. I want you gone by morning." The war was just beginning. Mark's key turned in our front door at exactly 6:47 p.m., 3 hours earlier than his scheduled return. I was waiting for him in the living room, sitting in his favorite leather chair with a glass of wine and 42 years' worth of photo albums spread across the coffee table. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was surrounded by memories of what I thought had been a loving marriage while preparing to confront the man who had made it all a lie. "Sandra?" he called out, his voice tentative. The usual confidence that had made him such a successful businessman was nowhere to be heard. "In here, Mark," I replied calmly. "We have so much to catch up on." When he appeared in the doorway, I was struck by how different he looked. This was the same man who had kissed me goodbye 3 days ago. But now I could see the guilt written across his face, the way his shoulders sagged under the weight of his deceptions. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie askew, and his usually perfectly styled hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. "Sandra, I can explain everything," he began, but I held up my hand to stop him. Can you explain this?" I held up the wedding ring I'd found in his desk. "Can you explain why you've stolen $490,000 from our marriage to fund your affair with our daughter-in-law? Can you explain how you plan to abandon our family for a woman young enough to be your daughter?" Mark's face went pale, and he sank into the chair across from me like a deflated balloon. "You know about the money?" "I know about everything, Mark. The secret accounts, the transfers to Jennifer's shell company, the loans you took against your business without my knowledge. Did you really think you could steal from me for over a year and I wouldn't eventually find out?" "It wasn't stealing," he said weakly. "It was our money. I was just reorganizing it." "Reorganizing it?" I laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Mark, you opened accounts that I had no access to. You transferred our retirement savings, money that I had contributed to through 42 years of managing our household and supporting your career. You were preparing to leave me with nothing while you started a new life with Jennifer." Mark buried his face in his hands. "Sandra, you don't understand. Jennifer and I, what we have is real. She makes me feel alive again, young again. We connect on a level that you and I haven't had in years." The words hit me like physical blows, but I forced myself to remain calm. "Connection, Mark? Is that what you call it when a 67-year-old man preys on his vulnerable daughter-in-law? When he uses his financial power to manipulate a woman whose husband is working himself to death to provide for his family?" "It wasn't like that," Mark protested. "Jennifer came to me. She was lonely, unhappy with David always being away. I was just being a supportive father-in-law at first, but then you saw an opportunity to relive your youth at the expense of everyone who loved you," I finished. "Mark, do you have any idea what you've done to David, to those children, to me?" For the first time, Mark looked directly at me, and I saw something that might have been regret in his eyes. "Sandra, I never wanted to hurt you. You're a good woman, a good wife, but we've grown apart. We're like roommates, not lovers. When was the last time we really talked, really connected? When was the last time you tried?" I shot back. "Mark, I've been here every day for 42 years. I've supported every dream, every business venture, every decision you've made. I've entertained your clients, managed your social calendar, raised your children, and built this home into a sanctuary for our family. If we grew apart, it's because you were too busy building your empire to notice the woman who was building your life. Mark stood up and began pacing, running his hands through his hair. This isn't how this was supposed to happen. Jennifer and I, we had plans. We were going to handle this carefully, make sure everyone was taken care of. Taken care of? I stood up as well, my voice rising. Mark, you stole $500,000 from me. You were planning to abandon a marriage that I've honored faithfully for over 4 decades. You've destroyed your son's marriage and your grandchildren's sense of security. Exactly who was being taken care of in your plan? The money would have been replaced, he said desperately. The business is doing well. I have investments. Jennifer and I were going to make sure you were financially secure. Financially secure? I laughed bitterly. Mark, you don't get to steal from me and then decide how much of my own money I deserve back. You don't get to destroy my life and then offer me a settlement like some kind of business transaction. The phone rang, interrupting our confrontation. Mark looked at the caller ID and his face went even paler. It's Patricia Henderson. Yes, I imagine it is. You see, Mark, while you were planning your romantic getaway with our daughter-in-law, I was planning my own strategy. Answer it. With shaking hands, Mark answered the phone. Hello, Patricia. I could hear Patricia's professional tone, even from across the room, though I couldn't make out the words. Mark's responses were short and increasingly panicked. What do you mean frozen? On what grounds? How is that legal? When he hung up, his face was ashen. She's frozen all our accounts. I can't access any of our money. Correction, I said coldly. She's frozen your access to our money. I, however, as the victim of financial theft and marital fraud, have full access to the accounts we built together. Funny how the law works when you're not the one committing crimes. Mark stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. Sandra, what have you done? I've protected myself and my family from a man who I thought I knew, but who turned out to be a stranger, a thief, a cheater, a man who would destroy everything we built together for a fantasy with a woman who is young enough to be his daughter. For a moment, we stood there in silence, 42 years of marriage hanging in the balance. Then Mark's phone buzzed with a text message. When he read it, what little color remained in his face disappeared completely. What is it? I asked. It's from Jennifer, he whispered. David threw her out. She needs me to come get her. I picked up my wine glass and took a sip, savoring the moment. Well then, Mark, I suggest you go. After all, you've made your choice, but when you walk out that door to go to her, you're walking away from this house, this marriage, and this family forever. Mark looked around the living room one last time, taking in the photos of our life together, the home we had built, the legacy we had created. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago. Sandra, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sure you are, Mark, but sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't return stolen money. Sorry doesn't heal the wounds you've inflicted on our son and our grandchildren. Sorry is just a word, and words without actions are meaningless. He nodded slowly, picked up his suitcase, and walked toward the door. Just before he reached it, he turned back one last time. What happens now? I set down my wine glass and looked him straight in the eye. Now you face the consequences of your choices, and I start building a new life without you. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and after 42 years of marriage, I was finally alone. But for the first time in months, I felt free. The law offices of Henderson and Associates buzzed with activity as Patricia and her team prepared for what she called the financial fight of the decade. It had been 1 week since Mark walked out of our house, and in that time, the true scope of his deception had begun to emerge like a cancer being slowly exposed to light. Sandra, what we've discovered goes far beyond a simple affair, Patricia said, spreading financial documents across the conference table. Your husband has been systematically hiding assets for almost 2 years. We've found evidence of offshore accounts, shell companies, and investments made in Jennifer's name, totaling over $750,000. I stared at the papers, each one representing another betrayal, another lie I had unknowingly lived with. $750,000? That's more than we initially thought. Much more. He was planning this exit strategy long before you discovered that ring. Look at this. Patricia pointed to a bank statement. He opened this Cayman Islands account 18 months ago, right after Jennifer started having problems in her marriage to David. Every month since then, He's been transferring money there through a complex web of business transactions designed to hide the trail. My lawyer's assistant, Maria, looked up from her laptop. Mrs. Collins, we've also discovered that Mr. Collins has been paying for Jennifer's lifestyle far beyond what you found initially. Her car lease, her credit cards, even her children's private school tuition. It's all been coming from accounts he created using your joint assets. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Mark been stealing from our marriage, but he had been using our money to play father figure to Jennifer's children, while his own grandchildren went without. I thought about all the times I had suggested we contribute more to Emma and Michael's college funds, and Mark had claimed we needed to be conservative with our spending. There's more, Patricia continued. We've subpoenaed Mark's business records, and it appears he's been using company funds to purchase gifts for Jennifer. Jewelry, vacation expenses, even a down payment on a condo in Jennifer's name. We're talking about potential embezzlement charges, not just marital asset theft. Embezzlement? The word hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Patricia, his business employs 12 people. If he goes to prison, those employees will lose their jobs, yes. But Sandra, that's not your responsibility. Mark made these choices knowing the risks. He chose to commit crimes to fund his affair, and now he has to face the consequences. My phone buzzed with a text message from David. Mom, Jennifer's lawyer is demanding custody of the kids and half the house. Can they do that? I showed the message to Patricia, who shook her head grimly. Jennifer's lawyer is fishing. She has no legal claim to David's house, and her custody case is going to be severely damaged by evidence of her affair and the financial improprieties. But we need to be prepared for her to get desperate. What do you mean? Desperate people do desperate things. Jennifer's entire financial future was tied to Mark's money, and now that we've frozen those assets, she's probably panicking. She's lost her husband, her home, and her financial security. She might try to use the children as leverage. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. Jennifer's name appeared on the screen, and Patricia immediately gestured for me to answer while she started recording. Hello, Jennifer, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Sandra, please, you have to help me. Jennifer's voice was desperate, broken. Mark can't access any of his money. I'm living in a motel with nowhere to go. David won't let me see the children, and my lawyer says the court might take them away from me entirely. Jennifer, you made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences. You don't understand. Mark promised me we'd be together. He promised me financial security. He said you two were basically already divorced, that you were just roommates. He made me believe that leaving David was the right thing to do. I felt a cold laugh escape my lips. So now it's Mark's fault that you betrayed my son? Jennifer, you're a grown woman. You made the choice to have an affair. You made the choice to accept stolen money. You made the choice to plan a future with a married man while you were married to his son. I was lonely, she screamed through the phone. David was never home. He worked constantly and barely spoke to me when he was there. Mark was kind to me. He listened to me. He made me feel special. Mark made you feel special with my money, I replied coldly. Every gift he bought you, every dinner he took you to, every promise he made about your future together was funded by theft from the woman who had been faithful to him for 42 years. Sandra, please. Jennifer was sobbing now. I know I made mistakes, but I can't lose my children. They're all I have left. Can't we work something out? Can't you talk to David? Jennifer, you should have thought about your children before you decided to destroy their family. You should have thought about them before you accepted stolen money. You should have thought about them before you planned to run away with their grandfather. I never planned to abandon them, she protested. Really? Then explain to me how you thought this was going to work. Explain to me how you plan to maintain a relationship with your children while married to their grandfather. Explain to me how you thought Emma and Michael were going to handle family gatherings, where their mother was married to their former grandfather. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Jennifer had been so caught up in the fantasy of her affair that she had never seriously considered the practical realities of what she was planning. Sandra, she whispered finally, what can I do to fix this? You can't fix this, Jennifer. The damage is done. But if you want any hope of maintaining a relationship with your children, you'll cooperate fully with the investigation into Mark's financial crimes. You'll return every penny of stolen money that you can account for, and you'll stay away from my family while we try to heal from the destruction you've caused. And if I don't cooperate? Patricia leaned forward and spoke directly into the phone. This is Patricia Henderson, Mrs. Collins' attorney. If you don't cooperate, Jennifer, we'll pursue criminal charges for money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and accessory to embezzlement. You'll lose your children permanently, and you'll likely face prison time. The choice is yours." The line went dead. Jennifer had hung up, but her desperation had been palpable through the phone. Patricia looked at me with something that might have been admiration. "Sandra, you've handled this with remarkable strength, but you need to prepare yourself. This battle is just beginning, and it's going to get worse before it gets better." I thought about my grandchildren, innocent victims in this war between adults. I thought about David, trying to hold his life together while his world crumbled around him. I thought about the employees at Mark's company whose livelihoods hung in the balance because of his crimes. "Patricia," I said, straightening my shoulders, "I've spent 42 years building a family and a life. I'm not going to let them destroy it without a fight. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'm ready." The battle lines had been drawn, and I was no longer the same trusting woman who had cleaned her husband's office a week ago. I was a warrior fighting for justice, for my family, and for my future. The hardest part of this entire nightmare wasn't dealing with lawyers or frozen bank accounts or even Mark's betrayal. It was sitting in my son's living room on a Saturday morning, watching my 8-year-old granddaughter Emma color in her princess coloring book while 5-year-old Michael built towers with his blocks, knowing that in a few minutes their innocent world was going to shatter forever. David sat beside me on the couch, his hands shaking as he prepared to have the most difficult conversation of his life. We had decided together that the children deserved to hear the truth from him, in age-appropriate terms, rather than overhearing fragments from adult conversations or, worse, having Jennifer try to manipulate the narrative to her advantage. "Emma, Michael, can you come sit with Daddy and Grandma for a minute?" David's voice was remarkably steady, though I could see the pain in his eyes. "We need to have an important talk." Emma looked up from her coloring book, her brown eyes, so much like David's, immediately sensing the gravity of the moment. Michael abandoned his blocks and climbed onto his father's lap, his small arms wrapping around David's neck in that trusting way that only children possess. "Daddy, where's Mommy?" Emma asked. "She's been gone for 5 days. Is she sick?" David took a deep breath, and I reached over to squeeze his free hand. "Emma, sweetheart, Mommy isn't sick, but she has made some choices that mean she can't live with us anymore." "What kind of choices?" Emma's question was direct, innocent, and devastating in its simplicity. "Well, baby, you know how we've taught you that it's important to be honest and to keep your promises." Emma nodded solemnly. "Mommy broke some very important promises. She wasn't honest with our family, and she hurt people we love very much." Michael looked up at his father with confusion. "Did Mommy hurt you, Daddy?" "Yes, buddy, she did. She hurt Daddy and Grandma and Grandpa very much, and because of the choices she made, she can't live with us anymore." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Is it because of something Michael and I did? Were we bad?" The question broke my heart, and I saw David's composure nearly crumble. This was every parent's nightmare, children blaming themselves for adult failures. "Oh, sweetheart, no," David said, pulling Emma into a hug with his free arm. "You and Michael didn't do anything wrong. You are perfect, wonderful children, and Mommy's choices had nothing to do with you. Sometimes grown-ups make bad decisions that hurt their families, and that's what happened here." "But where is Mommy going to live?" Michael asked, his voice small and confused. "I don't know yet, buddy, but what I do know is that you're going to live here with me, and Grandma is going to help take care of you, and we're going to make sure you feel safe and loved every single day." Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Grandma, are you and Grandpa getting divorced too?" The question hit me like a physical blow. These children, who had known nothing but family stability, were now watching their entire world reshape itself around adult betrayals they couldn't possibly understand. "Yes, sweetheart, we are," I said gently. "Grandpa made some very bad choices too, and he can't be part of our family anymore." "Did Grandpa hurt you like Mommy hurt Daddy?" Emma's emotional intelligence never ceased to amaze me, even in this devastating moment. "Yes, he did. But Emma, I want you to remember something very important. Sometimes people we love make choices that disappoint us and hurt us, but that doesn't mean we're not worthy of love. You and Michael are the most important things in this family, and nothing that the grown-ups have done changes how much we love you. Michael suddenly perked up with the emotional resilience that only young children possess. "Grandma, are you going to live with us now?" David and I exchanged glances. We had discussed this possibility, but hearing it from Michael's innocent lips made it feel real and right. "Would you like that, Michael?" I asked. "Yes. You make the best pancakes, and you read funny voices when you read stories." Emma, always the more serious of the two, asked the question that had been weighing on all of us. "Are we going to see Mommy again?" David looked at me helplessly. The truth was, we didn't know. Jennifer's visitation rights would depend on the outcome of the legal proceedings, her cooperation with the investigation, and ultimately what a judge decided was in the children's best interests. "I hope so, sweetheart," David said carefully. "But things are complicated right now. Mommy has to fix some of the problems she created before she can spend time with you again." "What about Grandpa?" Emma pressed. "Will we see him?" This was even more complicated. Mark's relationship with the children would likely be another casualty of his affair with their mother. How do you explain to children that their grandfather chose their mother over their father? How do you maintain family relationships when the adults have created such an impossible situation? "I don't know about Grandpa either, Emma. Right now, he's dealing with the consequences of his bad choices too." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the gravity of a child forced to grow up too quickly. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Grandma, promise me you won't leave us too." The request shattered what was left of my composure. I knelt down in front of both children and took their small hands in mine. "Emma, Michael, I promise you that I will never, ever leave you. No matter what happens with the grown-ups, no matter what changes in our family, I will always be your grandma, and I will always love you more than anything in the world." "Even more than Grandpa?" Michael asked. "Yes, sweetheart, even more than Grandpa. You and your daddy are my family now, and families stick together no matter what." As I held my grandchildren and watched my son try to be strong for them, I realized that Mark and Jennifer's betrayal had done more than destroy 2 marriages. They had forced these innocent children to confront adult realities that no child should have to face. They had shattered the security that every child deserves, the belief that the adults in their lives will protect them and make good choices. But as I looked at Emma's determined little face and Michael's trusting smile, I also realized something else. These children were resilient. They were loved. And while their family structure had changed, their family's love for them remained constant. "Daddy," Emma said suddenly, "can we have pancakes for lunch with chocolate chips?" David laughed for the first time in days. "Absolutely, Princess." "Grandma, are you ready to make your famous pancakes?" "I'm ready for anything," I said, meaning every word. "We're going to be just fine." And for the first time since this nightmare began, I truly believed it. 6 months after discovering that wedding ring in Mark's desk drawer, I sat in Judge Margaret Richardson's courtroom listening to the final verdict in what the Chicago Tribune had dubbed the Collins family scandal. The months between had been a whirlwind of depositions, financial audits, custody hearings, and media attention that I never could have imagined. In the matter of Collins versus Collins, Judge Richardson's voice echoed through the packed courtroom. "I find the defendant, Mark Collins, guilty of marital asset fraud, embezzlement, and financial elder abuse. He is hereby sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation." The gavel's bang felt like thunder in the silence that followed. After everything we had endured, justice was finally being served. But as I watched Mark being led away in handcuffs, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness for the waste of it all. Patricia squeezed my hand as the judge continued. "Furthermore, the court awards the plaintiff, Sandra Collins, full restitution of all marital assets, totaling $847,000, plus punitive damages of $200,000. Mr. Collins's business assets will be liquidated to satisfy this judgment. Over $1 million. The number seemed abstract after everything we had been through. Yes, it meant financial security for me and the children. Yes, it meant that Mark's crimes had consequences. But it couldn't restore the trust that had been shattered or repair the relationships that had been destroyed. Jennifer had been sentenced 2 weeks earlier to 6 months in county jail and 3 years of probation for money laundering and conspiracy charges. More devastating for her, she had lost all custody rights to Emma and Michael. Her cooperation with the investigation had kept her out of federal prison, but the judge had ruled that her profound lack of judgment and moral character made her unfit to parent. "Sandra," Patricia said as we left the courthouse, "you should feel proud. You fought for your family and won." "Did I win?" I asked, watching Mark's business partners dealing with reporters outside. 12 families lost their jobs when his company folded. My grandchildren lost their mother and grandfather. David is in therapy trying to rebuild his sense of trust. What exactly did we win? Patricia stopped walking and turned to face me. "You won your dignity. You won financial justice. You won the right to rebuild your life on your own terms. And most importantly, you protected those children from growing up thinking that betrayal and theft are acceptable behaviors." She was right, of course. The alternative, allowing Mark and Jennifer to get away with their crimes, would have sent a terrible message to Emma and Michael about accountability and consequences. But victory felt hollow when it came at such a tremendous cost. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Mom, the kids want to know if you're coming to Emma's school play tonight. She's playing the lead fairy in Midsummer Magic." I smiled for what felt like the first time in months. Tell her I wouldn't miss it for the world. The truth was, David and the children had become my reason for getting up each morning. We had moved into a beautiful new house together, purchased with part of the restitution money, and created an unconventional but loving family unit. David was an amazing single father, and I had discovered the joy of being not just a grandmother, but an active co-parent, helping to raise these remarkable children. Emma had shown incredible resilience, throwing herself into school and dance classes with renewed energy. When her teacher asked her to write an essay about what family means to me, she had written, "Family means people who love you even when other people make bad choices. My daddy and grandma are my family, and they make me feel safe every day." Michael, now 6, had adjusted with the remarkable adaptability of young children. He occasionally asked about mommy and bad grandpa, but seemed content with our explanations that some people make choices that mean they can't be part of our family anymore. The house we shared buzzed with life, homework sessions at the kitchen table, bedtime stories in the reading nook I had created, Saturday morning pancake breakfasts that had become our sacred tradition. I had discovered muscles I didn't know I had from chasing Michael around the playground, and energy I didn't know I possessed from helping Emma with her increasingly complex math homework. Most surprisingly, I had discovered myself. After decades of defining myself as Mark's wife, I was learning to be Sandra Collins. Not Mrs. Mark Collins, but a woman with her own interests, dreams, and desires. I had enrolled in art classes, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for during my years of supporting Mark's career. I had joined a book club with women my own age who appreciated literature and intellectual conversation. I had even started volunteering at the children's school, where my organizational skills and life experience were valued and appreciated. "Grandma," Emma had said to me just last week, "you seem happier now than you did before." Her observation had startled me, because she was absolutely right. Despite the pain, despite the betrayal, despite the legal battles and media attention, I was happier. I was living authentically for the first time in decades, making decisions based on my own values and desires, rather than what would best support someone else's dreams. The financial restitution had given us security, but more importantly, it had given us options. Emma's college fund was now fully secure. Michael would have the same opportunities. David had been able to reduce his work hours and spend more time with his children. We had the freedom to create the life we wanted, rather than simply surviving the one we had been given. But perhaps the greatest victory was the example we were setting for the children. They were learning that actions have consequences, that integrity matters more than convenience, that love doesn't mean accepting abuse or betrayal. They were learning that families can be rebuilt and that happiness is possible even after devastating losses. "You know what the most important thing is?" I had told Emma when she asked me why I wasn't sad about not being married anymore. "The most important thing is that we choose to love each other every day. Grandpa and your mommy stopped choosing love. They chose selfishness instead. But we get to choose differently." As I drove home from the courthouse that day, I realized that Mark and Jennifer had unwittingly given me the greatest gift of all. They had forced me to discover my own strength, my own worth, and my own capacity for building a beautiful life. They had intended to destroy me, but instead they had liberated me. The woman who had found that wedding ring 6 months ago, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more aware of her own value. The victory wasn't just in the courtroom verdict or the financial restitution. The victory was in becoming the woman I was always meant to be. 1 year after the discovery that changed everything, I stood in the kitchen of our new home, watching Emma help me frost cupcakes for Michael's 7th birthday party. The scene was perfectly ordinary and absolutely extraordinary at the same time. A grandmother and granddaughter creating something sweet together, their conversation flowing between school gossip and chocolate frosting techniques. "Grandma, do you think Mommy remembers that today is Michael's birthday?" Emma asked, her question matter of fact rather than sad. Children, I had learned, adapt to their reality with remarkable resilience when that reality is stable and loving. "I'm sure she does, sweetheart," I replied honestly. Mothers don't forget their children's birthdays, even when they can't be there to celebrate. Jennifer had been released from jail 3 months ago and was living in a small apartment across town, working as a part-time receptionist while completing court-mandated counseling. She was allowed supervised visits with the children once a month, meetings that took place in a sterile family services office under the watchful eye of a social worker. The children dutifully attended these visits, but they no longer saw Jennifer as their primary mother figure. That role had naturally evolved to me, and I embraced it with all the love and energy I possessed. "Will she ever get to come to birthday parties again?" Emma continued, carefully placing a sugar flower on top of Michael's Batman cupcake. "I don't know, honey. That will depend on the choices she makes going forward. Remember what we've learned about choices and consequences? That every choice we make creates our future," Emma recited, a lesson I had taught both children in various forms over the past year. "And if we want a different future, we have to make different choices." "Exactly right, my brilliant granddaughter." The kitchen filled with the sound of David's laughter as he chased Michael through the living room, both of them wearing Batman capes that I had sewn for the party. David had blossomed as a single father, discovering a playful side of himself that had been buried under years of work stress and marital tension. He had taken a new job with regular hours and better work-life balance, choosing family time over career advancement in a way that would have been impossible when he was trying to save a marriage that was already doomed. "Sandra," David had told me just last month, "I know this sounds terrible, but I'm grateful for what happened. Not for the pain it caused the kids, not for what you went through, but for forcing me to see what really matters. I was so busy trying to be the perfect provider that I was missing their childhood. Now I know what's important." Mark had been released from federal prison 2 months ago and was living in a halfway house while serving his probation. He had written me several letters, all variations on the theme of apology and regret. I had read each one carefully and then filed them away without responding. Some wounds require acknowledgement, not conversation. The children asked about him occasionally, and I answered their questions honestly, but without bitterness. "Grandpa made very bad choices that hurt our family. He's paying the consequences for those choices now. Maybe someday he'll find a way to make amends, but that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to build a beautiful life together." The financial restitution had done more than provide security. It had provided freedom. Emma was enrolled in dance classes that she loved, and Michael was playing soccer with the enthusiasm of a child who knew he was unconditionally supported. I had used part of the money to establish college funds for both children that would give them opportunities I could never have imagined. The rest was invested conservatively, ensuring that we would never face financial insecurity again. But more importantly, I had used this year to rediscover myself. The art classes had led to a part-time job teaching seniors at the community center, work that filled me with purpose and joy. The book club had introduced me to women who became genuine friends, relationships based on shared interests and mutual respect rather than social obligation. I had even started dating, carefully, selectively, but with the confidence of a woman who knew her own worth. "Harold is coming to the party today," I mentioned to Emma as we finished the cupcakes. "I like Harold," Emma said approvingly. "He makes you laugh, and he brings good presents." Harold was a retired professor I had met in my art class, a kind, intelligent man who brought flowers when he visited and helped Emma with her science projects. We were taking things slowly, both of us having learned that rushing into relationships can obscure important truths. But there was something healing about being courted by a man who appreciated my mind as much as my company, who saw my independence as attractive rather than threatening. "Are you going to marry Harold?" Emma asked with the directness that only children possess. "I don't know, sweetheart. Right now, I'm learning to enjoy being courted without worrying about the future. What I do know is that if I ever do marry again, it will be to someone who makes our family stronger, not someone who requires me to make myself smaller." The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of the first party guests, school friends of Michael's who would spend the afternoon running around our backyard, playing games, and eating too much cake. As I watched the chaos of 7-year-olds hyped up on sugar and excitement, I marveled at how different this celebration was from the formal, controlled gatherings that Mark and I used to host. This party was loud, messy, joyful, and real. The children felt free to be themselves, to express their emotions without fear of judgment or criticism. David was relaxed and present, participating in games rather than checking his phone for work emails. I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of the carefully coordinated outfits I used to think were necessary for family events. "Grandma!" Michael called out, racing toward me with chocolate frosting on his face and pure happiness in his eyes. "This is the best birthday party ever." "Even better than last year?" I asked, thinking of the elaborate celebration Jennifer had insisted on, complete with hired entertainment and expensive decorations that had cost over $2,000. "Way better," he declared. "Last year felt like a show. This year feels like a party." His words captured something profound about the transformation our family had undergone. We had stopped performing happiness and started living it. We had stopped trying to present a perfect image and started embracing our authentic reality. As the afternoon wound down and the last of the guests departed, I sat on our back porch watching David help the children clean up the yard. The setting sun cast everything in golden light, and I felt a peace that had been missing from my life for longer than I cared to admit. My phone buzzed with a message from one of my art class friends. "Sandra, the gallery wants to include 3 of your paintings in next month's Community Artists Show. This is so exciting." I smiled, remembering the woman who had discovered that wedding ring 15 months ago. She never could have imagined that her life would be rebuilt into something so much richer and more authentic than what she had lost. That woman had defined herself by her marriage, her role as a wife, her success at maintaining a perfect facade. This woman defined herself by her choices, her relationships, her capacity for growth and joy. "Are you happy, Grandma?" Emma asked, settling into the chair beside me as the evening grew cool. "Yes, sweetheart, I am. Are you?" "Very happy," she said with the certainty that only children possess. "We're good at being a family, aren't we? We're excellent at being a family." And we were. Not the family I had planned or expected, but the family we had chosen to become. A family built on honesty, respect, and unconditional love. A family that proved that endings can become beginnings, that betrayal can lead to liberation, that loss can create space for something beautiful and new. To everyone watching this story unfold, I want you to know that whatever betrayal you're facing, whatever loss has shaken your world, you have the power to choose what comes next. You have the strength to rebuild, the wisdom to choose better, and the capacity to create a life that honors your true worth. Your story doesn't end with someone else's bad choices. Your story begins when you decide to write a new chapter based on your own values and dreams. Thank you for following this journey with me. If this story has touched your heart or given you hope, please subscribe to this channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Share your own stories of triumph over betrayal. We're all stronger when we support each other. Remember, you are worth fighting for, your happiness matters, and your best chapters may still be ahead of you. Choose love, choose truth, choose yourself. Until next time, this is Sandra Collins, reminding you that every ending is also a beginning.